Have you ever found yourself trapped in a whirlwind of thoughts, revisiting a situation over and over again, searching for answers that always seem to elude you? If so, you're not alone. The tendency to overanalyze can be a mental trap that consumes us, an internal battle where we try to find clarity but only dive deeper into confusion. However, there is a powerful approach to free ourselves from this spiral: the ideas of the renowned psychologist Carl Jung. In this guide, we will explore how his teachings on consciousness, the unconscious, and the integration of the self can offer us the keys to breaking the cycle of overanalysis and finding mental peace. Get ready to discover how you can really overcome this tendency to overanalyze and start living more fully, with Jung's profound wisdom as your guide. Overthinking, rumination, whatever you want to call it, is the process of thinking about a situation over and over in an irrational way. We often try to justify emotional irrationality with logical facts about the situation we're overthinking, which only perpetuates the cycle. When we overthink a situation, all our focus is on that situation or that thought process. We have no time or energy to focus on other areas of our life, like health issues or things someone else said, and those areas of our life get neglected simply because we're so focused on what we're overthinking. Here's a quote about overthinking. Overthinking can be a way of trying to control a situation and feel more confident about what to do next. The brain tries to reduce your anxiety by running through possible scenarios and attempting to predict what will happen. Yes, exactly. The brain wants to anticipate what's coming, and this is very common in high-achieving, perfectionist type A people. If you have high standards for yourself, you might start overthinking the actions you're taking. You might overthink, "Oh no, I'm not doing that morning routine I should be doing because successful people do it." Some overthinkers always need structure, always want to know what comes next, and hate the unknown because they can't be good at the unknown. This overthinking begins to cloud your mind and frustrate you, and then you start living in this perpetual mode of overthinking. It's crucial that we find ways to work around this so that overthinking doesn't become something dominant in our lives. If your brain is constantly running at 100 miles per hour, I want to share examples of my own overthinking from the past. By the way, when I was younger, I always had this thought process that when I entered rooms or encountered people, I would think that I was making them anxious because I was tall. That was part of me when I was younger. Subconsciously, I wouldn't walk upright, right? I didn't have a strong presence because I was overthinking whether I was making people feel anxious or whether I was coming off as intimidating. In sports, it was a bit different. I'm competitive, so if you're intimidated, but in a social context, it was a bit different. Eventually, I began to understand why I was doing this, and I corrected it. Then in college, I worked at a computer store, basically selling printers, fun college job stuff. One day, this guy, a co-worker of mine, comes in, and the first thing he says to me is, "Man, you walk in here like you own the place." When he said that, in an instant, I thought, oh, he's feeling a little uncomfortable seeing me walk in with a straight posture. Then I just laughed it off, but in my head I thought, wait a second, him interpreting that I walk in with a straight posture has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with him. Why should I care about his insecurities regarding me appearing overly confident? That's something he has to deal with. Being confident in the way I walk is reflecting something in him that he needs to work on. When I started understanding this, I began to think about other parts of my life where I was overthinking, especially when it came to the opinions of others. But in what other areas am I overthinking the actions I need to take? Now, I'm not saying that I never overthink, but I catch myself very quickly. I understand a lot about the mind and meditation now, and it simply resolves the issue. Speaking of solutions, let's dive into how we can solve this. The first way to significantly reduce overthinking is to start loving the unknown. Earlier, I talked about type A personalities, high achievers, people who set high standards for themselves. You need to be comfortable with the unknown because life is full of it. Many things can happen at any given moment. Being okay with the unknown means structuring your day a little less, doing different things, trying new things, and challenging yourself. You'll start to get used to the unknown and become more comfortable with it. Next lesson, the need for results. Be less dependent on results. This simply means being spiritually detached from things and situations, being detached from what you want. I know it's a contradiction because you want this outcome, you want this to happen, but being okay with it not happening, and in your mind being prepared for it not to happen, that's okay. In fact, many times when we want to achieve something in a certain area of our life, we'd be fine letting go of it, and in doing so, it won't consume all our time. Next, learn to love failure and making mistakes. Failures can teach us a lot about things. I'm sure there are things you failed at in the past that you're glad you failed at because they've literally made you who you are today. Failure is character building. Character building is everything. If you look at society today, people don't grow because they don't fail enough, right? They don't go through enough struggles to build any kind of resilience or character. Because of that, they stay stuck. But when you embrace failure, you begin to develop like crazy. I wouldn't have this YouTube channel if I didn't embrace failure. I wouldn't have my business if I didn't embrace failure. Plus, failure builds your humility and manages your ego. If you're really climbing in life and you want to have things that ground you when you're achieving big things, but still remain humble, this is the perfect recipe. It's about feeding the clouds with the earth. Moreover, failure makes you love success even more. When we have one thing and we have its opposite, the opposite makes us appreciate the one thing more because we've experienced the opposite. If you had told me 5 years ago to sit and talk in front of a camera about psychology, I would literally have said, "Give me a month to prepare." Now it's second nature because I've had so many repetitions in it, right? I've had videos that I simply didn't like and I didn't upload them. Others that I liked, those are amazing, and I've learned a lot along the way because I've been okay with failure. I've overthought the videos. Some videos I have. But at the end of the day, now it's something I overthink less because I'm okay with failing at things. The next step is to identify your triggers. You might say, "Oh yes, I overthink because of stress and anxiety." My next question would be, how ego-related is that? How does overthinking help keep you within your ego, this identity you've created about yourself? So, for example, a parent might overthink about being late to, let's say, their child's basketball game. They're overthinking that, but they're just late to a game. But for them, they hate the idea of being late because their ego tells them they're an amazing parent, always there for their kids. That's their identity. So when they're late, they feel bad, and they're just ruminating about it. Another example, let's say someone is overthinking a baseball game they're going to play. They don't want to mess it up. They're overthinking, "Oh no, I don't want to mess it up." They come in with fear. Well, they're overthinking that because they have this identity of being a great athlete. Exactly like, "I'm a great athlete, I'm perfect. I would never make mistakes." So they come in with fear because they hold on to that identity and try to resist the other side, the duality, the fact that they might just have a bad game that night. But it's ironic because if they were okay with having a bad game that night, counterintuitively, they'd probably have a better game because if they're not resisting it, if they're not in their head too much, they're just flowing, they're just playing. You have to identify how much your overthinking is related to your ego. If you have the identity of, "I'm a great achiever," and you're overthinking about slacking off, well, maybe it's because you have this idea of being a high achiever, an identity. High achievers should still have moments when they rest. High achievers should still have breaks. In fact, forget the identity of being a great achiever. Just reformulate. Simply look at things from a different perspective. A perfect sentence that came to mind for this is, "I'm doing this because, I'm doing this because X, Y, and Z." For example, "I'm doing this because I see myself as a great achiever." You're reframing the overthinking. All these thoughts come, just keep coming. And there's emotion attached to them, but then you observe them without judgment and say, "Oh, I'm just doing this because I see myself as X, Y, and Z." It doesn't matter what identity you assume. Life has nuances. That means 100% of the time, you won't always be in that identity. For example, someone who's a CEO of a company is the CEO at work. But outside of work, they're stuck in traffic. They have to visit the doctor. Sometimes they need to take care of themselves. Maybe their house has a leak, and they have to fix it. They have things outside of the identity of being a CEO, but we assume these identities as if they're a given, as if this is the end of everything, like, "I'm a CEO, I'm only this person." You have different roles in life. You don't carry that identity everywhere. Someone who's a master in the field of sociology, let's say, is trying to learn karate. They're not a karate master. They enter karate as a beginner, like a new person learning as a student with their sociology teacher. What they're learning in karate feels different. So life has nuances. There are different things going on. And when we overthink, it's because we're attached to an identity we need to detach from, right? Maybe there are certain areas of life where you're not the best, and that's okay. Next, practice feeling meditation. I call this feeling meditation. It's not a concept I invented. I'm sure many people do this, but I like calling it feeling meditation. This is when you feel the emotional effect of overthinking. Many times we think about things and add emotional weight to them, making them feel more real to us. That's how the mind and body work. When there's emotional weight to the thought, it becomes more serious and the body takes it more seriously. But when we meditate, close our eyes and simply observe how we feel, we just feel it and observe it, without judgment. We don't judge ourselves. We just feel it and watch it. Ironically, it starts to slow down. When you do this, it begins to slow down and calm down. The mind becomes serene. I recommend a guided meditation. Binaural beats are amazing. You can find them on YouTube. I recommend alpha binaural beats because when you're overthinking, your brainwaves go very fast. In neuroscience, they call this brainwave pattern beta. Beta brainwaves are very fast. They're very quick. That's when we're processing things, having conversations, doing things, taking actions of some kind. But then there are alpha brainwaves, which are a bit slower. In alpha, this is typically in meditative states when you're very calm and relaxed. There's less of this fast thinking and more serenity and calmness. In fact, in alpha, you can see things more logically because there's less noise in your mind. I highly recommend feeling meditation because it truly slows down your brainwaves to allow for more relaxation. Next, relax with catastrophizing. The fact is, the worst-case scenario you're thinking about probably won't happen. I'm sure like a month ago, you can testify to something you thought was going to happen that didn't end up happening. That's probably the case right now. Now, the next scenario is, what if it really does happen? You know what's going to happen when the thing you're overthinking really happens. It probably won't be as bad as you think. And then if it's as bad as you think, you'll adapt. That is, you'll adapt to it, and it will become a new normal. For example, imagine someone thinks they have a muscle injury and keeps overthinking it. They go to the hospital, and it turns out they've torn something. That feeling of anxiety is real, and the worst-case scenario they feared has come to pass. But what happens next? They might feel bad for an hour, a couple of hours, a day, or even 2 days. But eventually it becomes part of their new reality. They think, okay, I have a torn muscle. Maybe I need surgery, maybe not, maybe I just need rest. Even if the doctor says it's not that bad, the situation has now become normal, and over time, they adapt. They realize things can improve from here. This is how you should think about it. Even if the worst-case scenario happens, which statistically it probably won't, things will get better. This is the kind of faith you need to have. Faith in your ability to recover, to process, and to adapt. If you're someone with religious or spiritual inclinations, trust fully in that higher power or the universe, knowing that things will improve. Worst-case scenarios are rare, but when they do occur, they can still be overcome. A lot of this is a mental game, and one of the biggest issues with overthinking is that we need to be cautious not to overthink about overthinking. It's a meta-perspective. Often we can start overthinking that we're overthinking. You can simply stop and say, okay, now I'm overthinking about overthinking. Just observe your thoughts without judgment. Many times, we're too quick to judge ourselves, and that's where the solution lies. Judge less. Judging less, both others and ourselves, makes us happier. When we judge less, we reduce emotional projections and neurotic thinking. Many of our judgments are negative, and those are the ones that hit hardest. I should have done this. Why am I like this? Stop the judgments. This brings us back to awareness. You have to observe yourself. Pay attention to the words you speak. Most people don't realize that the words we say are powerful. Words have meaning and vibration. They can affect things around us. There's this concept I've heard about where people speak to plants and the plants react. Some even die. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. Words have an impact. If words can affect living things like plants, imagine what they can do to us. They can affect your psychology, your emotions, and your overall well-being. That's why this awareness is so critical. Next, communication is key. We often try to read people's minds or psychoanalyze their actions from a distance, assuming we know why they're doing something. Instead, we should ask. Communicate. Ask them what their thought process is. Chances are they'll provide you with more context. Communication brings clarity. Relying on assumptions and guesses, though, leads to overthinking. So if you're uncertain, ask. It's also important to communicate with yourself. Journaling is a great way to do this. Write down your thoughts. I'm overthinking right now. Just get everything on paper and let it go. This act of communication, whether with others or yourself, helps bring self-integration. When you're in tune with yourself, you become deeply aware of your inner workings, and there's nothing anyone can say about you that you don't already know. Lastly, here's my favorite mantra. It doesn't matter. When you truly internalize that, life becomes easier. It doesn't matter if your overthinking leads to something happening or not. It doesn't matter. Life is a game and we're all just here to experience it.